But Hitler's version of fascism believes that conflict is based on what?
Race.
Race, as opposed to the communist class. Okay? And of course, everybody in the world looked for the day when those two philosophies would attack each other. Fascism and communism. And in June of 1941, Hitler invades Russia. And we'll get into that. What you want to keep track of too is like mistakes that Hitler made. But right now we're setting the pattern for how Hitler starts the war. We talked about how he saw conflict in China, Japan misbehaving, Italy invading Ethiopia, Spanish Civil War. And in all of those things, what did the League of Nations do? What did the Western democracies do? Not much. Squat. Okay? America, our foreign policy at this time was called what? Isolationism. We thought we had been tricked by England. And we had. English propaganda in World War I was very, very good. And they probably quadrupled the severity of what the Germans were. Germans were not fuzzy-wuzzy cuddle bears in World War I, but they were hardly what Germany will become in World War II. If you wanted to put it on a scale, who's the worst country? On a scale of 1 to 10, Germany would probably have been a 11 or 12. England was about a 7. Russia was incredibly responsible for World War I. You know? Huh?
What was America?
We were a 5. We shouldn't have gotten involved in it at all. Remember, hindsight is always 2020. Look, it gave the Baltic states independence until 1940 when Stalin took them over. Name me a Baltic state.
Lithuania.
Yes.
Estonia.
Name me a greater Slavic Balkan state.
Yugoslavia.
Yugoslavia. You see the difference?
Woo!
Okay, the Baltic states are the Baltic Sea areas of Russia. They're all listed there. What area is separated from Germany? Yes, why?
Because Poland needed
To give Poland access to the sea. To give them... Now, 90% of the people who live in Danzig speak what language?
German.
Yeah. Who doesn't like this idea?
Hitler.
And he will try to reverse it in September of 1939, and that will start the first day of
World War II.
the big one. Czechoslovakia and all that. Where do Germans live in Czechoslovakia?
The Sudetenland.
Yes. Now that had never been part of Germany,
On page 76.
but it had been part of the German Austrians, right? And so you end up with all this. So look what Hitler does. You know, slow by slow, piece by piece, the Saar Valley does a little election, and they become full participants of Hitler's new empire. What's his new empire called?
The Third Reich.
The Third Reich. What does Reich mean?
I highlighted it.
Empire. Look at it real quick. So the First Reich is the Holy.
Roman.
The Second Reich is Otto von Bismarck, the Kaiser and all that. And then now the Third Reich. Hitler promised it would last for,
1,000 years.
well, at least 1,000 years. It lasted for 12. Okay? Now, then, the big test came in 1936 when Hitler had started rebuilding his army. Now, it wasn't very strong. It wasn't half as strong as the French army was in 1936. But it was more bold. And they occupied the Rhineland. The Rhineland is part of Germany. But it was to be what? The Versailles Treaty said it was supposed to be demilitarized. What would you use, like, a demilitarized zone would create a buffer zone between Germany and France.
Oh.
The French strategy was, if there's a war and Germany invades Belgium, then the French army will move into Belgium to stop them. Did that work last time? No, of course not. Okay? Yeah, and then you're already out of position. The best metaphor for that I can show you is like in football. Remember, the offense goes to the line. They call their play hike. What's the defense doing?
Huddle.
They're still in a huddle. Can they stop this play? Probably going to be a very successful.
If the French had extended the Maginot Line up through Belgium, would it have helped
Yes,
at all?
genius.
They tried to too late. No, because warfare is three-dimensional now. With tanks, highly mobilized tanks, and airplanes, they could break through. By now you have a man named Neville Chamberlain. He's the Prime Minister of England. He's the greatest practitioner of this foreign policy term, appeasement. In appeasement, Edouard de Ladier is the French Prime Minister, Chamberlain, the English. They met with Hitler and Mussolini at Munich. At Sudeten, the question was the Sudetenland. There's about 1.5 million or so Germans that live there. It is very industrialized. The Czechoslovakians don't want to give it up because the way the mountainous terrain is, the geography, is like a big shield protecting the rest of Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia is industrialized enough. They have a place called the Skoda Works. Skoda is a series of big factories that can produce some pretty good war machines. The Czechoslovakian army is decent. And if the Germans attacked it in 1937 or 38 or so, the Germans would probably take heavy casualties. See, every year Hitler's doubling the size of his army. If he attacks too soon, he'll be crushed. So if he can get things through diplomacy, so they met there. Mussolini brokers a deal and convinces the Western democracies, England and France, give Hitler the Sudetenland, and this is the last thing he'll demand. See, Hitler took the Versailles Treaty and shredded it. And he planned to reverse everything. By reversing everything of the Versailles Treaty, it made him a hero. And actually, the treaty we know was grotesquely unfair and provocative. That Germany would have to get revenge one day. Well, but Hitler's getting all the credit for it. So, the difference between Bismarck and Hitler, I want you to know this. For a while, Hitler is practicing Bismarckian diplomacy. Try to use diplomacy. Make sure your enemies are isolated. No one's going to come help them. One after another, it happens. The difference, though, is Hitler moved too soon. Bismarck would make a move, and maybe 3 or 4 years later make another one. Hitler was making moves every 3 or 4 months, a couple of years sometimes. Okay? And then that provoked the world. They started noticing, paying attention, his wanton aggression. Well, once he got what he wanted from the Sudetenland, months later, in March of 1939, he just took over the rest of Czechoslovakia. What did England and France do? Nothing. One of the saddest parts is that Chamberlain came back from Munich with a piece of paper, and he waved the agreement with Hitler's signature on it. That mean anything? Is Hitler going to stand by that? And he goes, with this, quote, I think he said something like, we now have peace in our time. He said that about a couple months before World War II broke loose. Okay? We now have peace. He meant well. He was naive, if not overly idealistic. Appeasement is always a bad plan. But Hitler doesn't bluff. Not really. And he wants his way. He would like his way without war. But in the end, it's inevitable. Well, he threatened war. England and France warned him not to. So on September 1st, 1939, he invaded Poland with a massive army. And he said Poland provoked him. That the Polish army attacked a German radio station. Really? On the border? And there were several dead Germans. Well, what it was there were some prisoners. The Germans shot them, put them in German uniforms, and laid them all over the radio station, as if would the Polish army attack Germany? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But know this, he tried to practice some Bismarckian philosophy. He made sure Russia wouldn't interfere. So know it, it's called the Nazi-Soviet Pact. Okay? The Nazi-Soviet Pact. Hitler and Stalin, look at that political cartoon.
It's cute.
Yeah!
No, yeah.
And basically they divided Poland up. Has this ever been done before?
Yeah.
Poland once again was partitioned.
Aww.
It had existed only for 20 years. Now it was wiped off the face of the earth. Well, Hitler's army practices what kind of war? Blitzkrieg. Lightning war. Lightning war is highly mobilized massive units of tanks. New technology has made the tank more lethal than ever. Know this. Radio communications. Tanks can talk to each other. Okay? They are now ventilated. Okay? To get the smoke and the noise and all that kind of stuff out. They now have suspension systems and full rotating turrets. And the guns are very powerful. Like German tanks will eventually sport an 88mm cannon, high velocity. That gun will take out any tank. In May, the Germans are able to blast through the Ardennes forest and flank the entire French army. What they did is they lured the French army to move into Belgium, which put them disconnected from the Maginot Line. The Germans went between the Maginot Line and the French army. But in this case, instead of racing for Paris, they turned north to a town called Dunkirk. But the main thing I want you to know about Blitzkrieg, last thing Hitler wanted to do was get into a long, dragged-out war of what? Attrition. Germany lost the last time that happened, right? Germany wants lightning war, quick. And blitzkrieg is less, is tactics, no doubt, but it's also economics. Quick wars. And Hitler was able to accomplish in a month, less than, what the Imperial Germany, the Kaiser, had been unable to do in 4 years. In less than a month, France was crushed. Now, there's only one country left in the world at the moment fighting Hitler that can resist in a serious way. England is alone. Great Britain alone. What's Great Britain's greatest military advantage? They have a great navy, supported by the idea that they are...
RAF.
Yeah, they're an island. They're an island. Hitler has the greatest army. Hitler does not have much of a navy. But the British Navy can be thwarted because the German Air Force, if the German Air Force, let's just say the Battle of Britain, right there is where I'm at. If the German Air Force, if they could fly over the English Channel, chase away British ships, a German army could cross on barges. It would be dangerous. If the British Navy showed up, or if there was bad weather, Hitler's army could be wiped out, right? Hitler was not overly enthusiastic about this type of warfare. What's this type of warfare called? When you attack by sea.
Amphibious?
Amphibious attack. What country is the greatest at it?
America.
Oh, absolutely. And why? How did New Orleans contribute to amphibious? The Higgins boat. Good, good job. Yes. Now, but as Emily said, there is a second group. The group that was most responsible for making sure England is not destroyed is the RAF. The Royal Air Force. And they have two weapons that are very important. Radar. Radar is a series of signals that are sent out, radio waves, that bounce off metallic objects and are detectable and come back. So we know how many airplanes, how high they're flying, from what direction, and their speed. So that RAF pilots can sit and take naps and not take off until about 10 minutes before the battle. Instead of going out there for a couple hours and patrol and fly and being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And the Germans bomb at will. Hitler had made a series of mistakes. He allowed the British Army to escape at Dunkirk. He had not built a big enough navy. He had not built the right type of airplanes.
If he just waited a little bit longer.
That's a good question, but he was 50 years old. He wanted it to be done during his lifetime. And he felt the longer he waited, the stronger his enemies would become. Because Stalin was starting to rebuild the Russian army. Stalin had killed 30,000 of his officers in his army during the purges, and the Russian army was very weak.